Racism often hides behind the smallest everyday moments. Lieutenant Colonel Olivia Carter, a high-ranking black officer, thought she was simply running errands at the supermarket. But when a prejudiced police officer decides to accuse her of impersonating military personnel, everything changes. What follows is a tense battle between truth and bias, between power and equality. This story isn't just about one woman's struggle. It's a call to action for all of us to confront discrimination. If you're ready to see how one woman stood up to the system, hit like and subscribe. Don't miss out on the next impactful story coming your way tomorrow. The sky was gray, signaling an impending rain. A cold winter wind blew through the parking lot of a large downtown supermarket. Lieutenant Colonel Ava Turner stepped out of the car, her neat uniform, the badge of rank embroidered on her lapel, glinting under the streetlights. She walked slowly inside, unaware of the glances she received from some of the people around her. Ava had served in the military for 15 years, seeing battles, sacrifice, loss, and injustice. But while she was used to the challenges, she still couldn't get used to the suspicious look she received whenever she stepped out of uniform. For many, the sight of a black woman holding such a high rank was unfathomable. Inside the supermarket, Ava pushed her shopping cart toward the checkout. She didn't buy much, just a few personal items, some food, and a bottle of water. Even though she was a high-ranking officer, she preferred to do her own daily chores rather than rely on assistants or colleagues for help. As she waited in line for her turn, Police Officer Michael Cooper walked in. He was a tall, middle-aged man with a stern face and piercing eyes. A longtime police officer, Michael had always been conservative and deeply prejudiced. He believed that high-ranking positions in society, especially in the military and law enforcement, were not open to people of color, especially women. Michael was about to go get coffee when his eyes accidentally stopped on Ava. He frowned, feeling that something was wrong. A black woman in a lieutenant colonel's uniform. The thought made him uncomfortable. In Michael's mind, such a person could not really hold a high position in the army. She must be wearing a fake uniform to carry out some scheme. This thought urged him to move closer. Ava was still waiting in line, not noticing Michael approaching. It was only when a gruff voice rang out that she looked up. "Hey you." Michael stood in front of her, hands on his hips, eyes searching. "Who are you?" Ava raised an eyebrow. She didn't know this man, and the way he approached her was anything but friendly. "Excuse me, are you talking to me?" she asked, her voice calm. "Yes, I am talking to you." Michael looked straight into her eyes, his tone full of questioning. "Why are you wearing this uniform? Do you know that wearing a fake uniform is illegal?" Ava blinked, not believing her ears. She sighed, trying to keep her composure. "I don't understand what you mean." "This is my uniform. I'm a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army." Michael sneered. "Lieutenant colonel? Someone like you? Are you kidding me?" Ava Turner took a deep breath. She was used to the suspicious looks and whispers behind her back when she wore this uniform. But she never expected that today, in the middle of a crowded supermarket, she would be questioned by a police officer about her identity. Michael crossed his arms over his chest, his eyes filled with sarcasm. "I'll ask again. Who are you and why are you wearing a lieutenant colonel's uniform?" Ava looked him straight in the eye. Her voice calm but no less authoritative, she said, "I already answered. I am Lieutenant Colonel Ava Turner, serving in the United States Army. If you need verification, contact your military unit yourself instead of harassing me like this." Michael laughed, a cold, contemptuous laugh. "You think I'm going to believe you? A black woman, a lieutenant colonel? That's ridiculous. I've been in the police force for 20 years, and I've never seen anyone like you hold such a high rank. Honestly, where did you get that uniform?" "On eBay." He smirked, his voice full of mockery. Ava clenched her fists. She had faced prejudice like this all her life, but that didn't mean she had to endure such public humiliation. "I have no obligation to prove anything to you," she said, her voice steady. "If you don't believe me, go see for yourself. It's not my responsibility to satisfy your unreasonable doubts." Michael's face turned a shade of red. He hated being challenged, especially by a black woman. "Who do you think you are, talking to me like that? I'm a police officer, and I have the right to demand identification from a suspicious person like you." Ava raised an eyebrow. "I was just standing in line to pay for my personal items. The only thing that makes you feel suspicious is the color of my skin in this uniform. I have committed no crime, and you have no legitimate reason to question me like this. If you continue to harass me, I will consider this an abuse of power." Michael sneered, taking a step forward, his voice menacing. "Do you know that lying about being in the military is a crime? I can have you arrested right now for falsely impersonating a soldier. It's a serious insult to those who have actually served." Ava crossed her arms, looking at him defiantly. "Really? What evidence do you have to prove that I'm an impersonator? Or are you just relying on your own personal prejudices? If you want to arrest me, I advise you to consider carefully. You can investigate my identity yourself, or you can continue to show your lack of professionalism and get yourself into trouble. The decision is yours." Ava's calmness made Michael's blood boil. He was used to people backing down when he threatened them, obeying his commands. But this woman was not intimidated. Her unyielding attitude challenged him, and that made him even angrier. He growled, "You have an inappropriate attitude towards a police officer. You should be careful with your words." Ava smiled slightly, but there was a dangerous glint in her eyes. "And you should be careful with your actions, because if you continue like this, the one in trouble won't be me but you." The crowd around them began to pay attention to the confrontation. Some of them secretly took out their phones to record. Ava could hear whispers around her. What's going on? Is she being suspected just because she's black? Michael realized someone was filming, but he was too angry to stop. Who do you think you are to threaten me? I am the law here, and I will not let an imposter like you insult the military. I will arrest you right now and take you to the station. He reached out to grab Ava's arm, but just as his hand was about to touch her, Ava took a step back, her voice cold. I'm warning you one last time, Officer Michael. You're crossing the line. If you dare touch me without good reason, there will be serious consequences, and I assure you it won't end well for you. Michael clenched his fists, his face twitching with anger. You're threatening a police officer? You think you can get away with this? You'll regret your attitude toward me. Ava didn't blink. No, I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling the truth. If you want to arrest me, you can try, but make sure you're prepared for the consequences. Ava's unwavering confidence made Michael hesitate for a moment, but his pride wouldn't let him admit his mistake. I will not let someone like you challenge me on my own turf. You will learn to be more reasonable. With that, he reached down to his belt where his gun was strapped. You think you're so strong. Okay, you can go check my information now, Ava said, no longer wanting to interact with him. She had tried to remind him of respect, but he wasn't listening. Ava sighed and turned away, trying to keep her composure. In her mind, her close friend, Sheriff Daniel Scott, was on her mind. It was time for her to call him. But before she could do so, Michael suddenly shouted a threat that made everything even more intense. Ava's heart clenched as Michael growled, "You will be held accountable for this." He suddenly pulled a gun from his belt, pointing it directly at her. His anger had reached its peak, and the situation became more dangerous than ever. People around started to turn and look, but no one dared to intervene. Ava remained calm, refusing to panic. She couldn't allow herself to lose control. Michael, you can't do this, Ava said, her voice calm but her anxiety rising. Don't do something you'll regret for the rest of your life. But Michael ignored her warning. He felt powerful, his anger blinding him. Who do you think you are? A black woman talking like that? He yelled, his hands shaking as he held the gun. I will shoot you right now if you don't tell the truth. Ava didn't flinch. She knew that if the situation escalated, no one would be able to save her. But she also knew one thing for sure: she could protect herself. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself that she was a soldier and soldiers never gave up. You don't want to do anything stupid, Ava warned. You know this will have serious consequences. She stood tall, determined and fearless. I'm going to call the sheriff now. He'll be here right away, and everything will be taken care of. Michael glared at her with suspicion and anger but hesitated to shoot. She had warned him before, and now he had only one choice: to stop or face the consequences of his actions. Ava had given him the chance, and now with steady hands she pulled out her phone and began dialing, no longer looking at Michael. His gun was still aimed at her, but his confidence was wavering. His grip loosened, and his eyes betrayed a shift in his thoughts. As soon as Ava started talking to Daniel, things began to change. It didn't take long for the sheriff to respond. Given their close relationship, Daniel knew if Ava was calling, something was seriously wrong. "Daniel, I need your help right away," Ava said into the phone, her voice now shifting to one of confidence. "I'm having trouble with a police officer at the supermarket. He's threatening me." Daniel didn't need to hear more. "I'll be right there, Ava. Don't do anything dangerous. We'll get this over with." The tense moments passed slowly. Ava could feel the weight of the situation in the supermarket. Michael's eyes never left her, his gun still pointed directly at her. But Ava remained calm, her military training keeping her grounded. She could hear the sirens in the distance, and the pressure of being watched by the crowd intensified. Some people had noticed the danger and started filming the confrontation. But Ava couldn't afford to panic. She was a lieutenant colonel, used to stressful situations, and she wouldn't let Michael manipulate her any longer. She looked straight into his eyes, her gaze unwavering. "What can you do to me? Do you think you can get away with this without facing the consequences?" she asked, her voice strong and fearless. Michael roared in anger. "I won't let you impersonate a military uniform like that. I will make you pay." What Michael didn't realize was that the moment those words left his mouth, police lights lit up outside the supermarket. Less than a minute later, a blue police car pulled up in front of the store. The door opened, and a man in a police uniform stepped out. Ava's heart finally released a sigh of relief as she recognized him immediately, her best friend, Daniel Scott, the city's police chief. Daniel walked quickly into the supermarket, his sharp eyes scanning the scene. He saw the gun still pointed at Ava and immediately stepped forward. Michael put the gun down. "Now," Daniel said coldly, taking another step toward him. Ava stood aside, no longer focusing on Michael. There was no fear left in her, just the comfort of knowing that help had arrived. Ava felt no more worry in her eyes. She knew Daniel would handle everything. His presence was a powerful shield, dispelling any threat Michael posed. "Don't you realize?" Daniel continued, his eyes sharp, his gaze cutting through Michael. "I am the sheriff of this city, and Ava Turner is my best friend. She is not who you think she is." Michael began to lower his gun, realizing things were more complicated than he had thought, though he still hesitated to fully drop it. Sheriff Daniel stepped forward, unwavering. "If you keep that gun in your hand for another second, I will deal with you here. No exceptions." Terrified now, Michael knew he couldn't afford suspension or prosecution, but it was too late. Daniel turned to Ava, thanking her for her patience. "This isn't over," he added. Ava nodded slightly, relief creeping in, but she knew what had happened couldn't be ignored. Michael had not only insulted her, but he had also violated her rights. "Michael Cooper, I demand you come with me to the station immediately," Daniel said coldly. "You'll be held accountable." After a brief hesitation, Michael followed Daniel out. All eyes in the supermarket were on Ava as she stood in silence. A few shoppers approached, patting her on the shoulder. "Thanks for being patient," one woman said, admiration in her eyes. Ava felt relief, but the experience reminded her of racism and the ongoing fight against injustice. As Daniel worked with Michael, Ava returned to the counter, trying to regain composure. But she couldn't ignore the weight of the situation. She received a call from her superior, who confirmed they'd handle it from here. "We've heard about the incident," he said, his voice deep. "Let us handle things." Ava gazed out the window, where sunlight filtered through the trees. She knew justice would prevail, and people would have to learn to treat each other fairly. The next day, Ava's case spread through the community and social media. Witnesses admired her for standing up to discrimination with courage. But not everyone was supportive. Michael was immediately suspended and investigated. His actions were exposed, and his history of racist behavior came to light. Colleagues and witnesses confirmed his long-standing hostility toward people of color, which had been a secret until now. At a police meeting, Daniel Scott called for a full investigation. "We can't allow people like him to continue wearing the badge," he said, outraged. "Tolerating this will destroy public trust in the police." Soon after, Michael was fired and faced criminal charges. Evidence of his abuse of power and violations of human rights were uncovered, including videos from witnesses that circulated on social media, further damaging his reputation. On the day of the trial, everyone focused on the courtroom where Michael faced serious charges. Ava was not present, but she knew justice would be served. Sheriff Daniel Scott and other witnesses testified, further worsening Michael's situation. After a short trial, Michael was sentenced to 3 years in prison for abuse of power and racial discrimination. The verdict was no surprise to anyone in the courtroom. Michael's actions were blatant and crossed the line of tolerance. For Ava, the verdict didn't change the past, but it showed that anyone, regardless of who they were, could be held accountable for their actions. Ava didn't need to be in court to know she made the right choice. She stood up to Michael Cooper, exposing an undeniable truth. However, she knew that despite winning this battle, many challenges lay ahead. That's why she continues to fight for justice, ensuring that racism will never dim its light again. This incident not only impacted Ava and Michael, but also sent a strong message to society. Racist actions will not be tolerated, and violators will face appropriate consequences. In a world full of division, every individual has the right to stand up for their dignity and rights. Several months later, the aftermath of Michael Cooper's actions still reverberated throughout the community. The trial may have ended, but the impact of that day in the supermarket lingered, affecting not only Ava but also the local police force and the entire city. Ava had returned to her duties, stronger than ever, knowing that her stand against injustice had sparked something bigger. Her name was now synonymous with courage, integrity, and the fight against racial discrimination. But the emotional toll still weighed on her. She had won the battle, but the war against prejudice and systemic bias was far from over. Sheriff Daniel Scott, having handled the aftermath with a steady hand, kept working to rebuild the community's trust in law enforcement. Under his leadership, the department implemented new training programs on racial sensitivity, and officers were required to attend workshops on implicit bias. But the wounds left by Michael's actions were deep, and the road to healing was long. Public opinion had shifted. People no longer viewed the police with the same trust. The community was divided, and many still couldn't believe the extent of Michael's behavior. Meanwhile, Ava's continued to receive messages of support from all corners: veterans, community leaders, and even strangers who saw her as a symbol of defiance against injustice. The months after the trial were hard for everyone involved, but Ava knew that change had begun. As she prepared for another day at the military base, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The fight wasn't over. It never would be. But Ava was ready. For as long as it took, she would continue to stand tall, knowing that every battle won was another step closer to a world where justice truly prevailed for all. And though it had been months since that day at the supermarket, Ava's resolve had only grown stronger. No matter what challenges came next, she would face them head-on, unwavering, unafraid, and determined to make the world a better place for everyone. This story is not just a confrontation between an individual and societal prejudice, but also a wake-up call about the abuse of power and the impact of racism within public institutions. Although a victory at any given time may bring comfort, it cannot erase the scars that society has left on those who are oppressed. While we can take pride in the victories we achieve, we must also realize that the battle is far from over. Every day, every small action we take, whether standing up against injustice or simply understanding and respecting one another, contributes to a larger change. But can we create a world where everyone, regardless of race or ethnicity, can live equally without being discriminated against? This story reminds us that, while we may experience small wins, no one can truly be free if any group of people is still left out. Therefore, we must continue to fight, not just for our own rights, but for the rights of everyone. Remember that justice can never be fully achieved if it lacks unity from all sides. Note: this story is entirely fictional and created for the purpose of raising awareness. It highlights issues of responsibility, justice, and the importance of treating everyone with respect and dignity. We firmly oppose violence, prejudice, and injustice in all forms. Viewer discretion is advised.